my pleasure to introduce Mr. Steve Calloway. He is a St. Louis, Missouri native. He moved to Columbia in 1978 with his wife, Iris, to begin a long career at the University of Missouri Hospital and clinics as a pharmacist. More recently, Calloway was the director of pharmacy for Missouri HealthNet Division, which was Medicaid, and Steve is an NCCJ facility trainer, and in retirement, he remains civically active as a member of the Minority Men's Network, as well as other community organizations and activities. Steve and Iris have 2 adult children who have given them 3 delightful grandchildren. Without further ado, please welcome back Mr. Steve Calloway. Do I need to
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
There we
Good
go.
morning.
I am excited to be here with you this morning. Thank you to Ms. Matthews and Ms. Jenkins and Ms. Meacham Kane for all your support and for inviting me to be here today. And before we get started, or as we get started, I always want to make sure I give a shout out to my buddy, Mr. Sion Williams, who I see is on the call. And Sion, good to see you, my brother. And it's a delight to see everybody else on the call today too. So thank you so much, everyone. Let's see if I can get this switched over here correctly. Okay, so let's go. So I am going to talk about COVID-19 and try and give you an update on what's going on with COVID. So I'm going to talk, I want to talk about, excuse me, I want to talk about the vaccines, and I want to also talk about just kind of also the status of what's going on here. I don't know why this is doing this. Oh, there it is. There we go. So, yeah, so COVID-19 update. Here we go. Why am I paused here sharing? I don't want to share. Yeah, let's resume. Let's resume. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. All right. So first of all, let's talk about the status of COVID-19 in the United States first. So if looking at the United States, and this is current information as of yesterday at 8 p.m. And the total number of cases in the United States, 31, almost 32 million cases since January 21st of last year. That's a lot of folk when you consider the United States population is maybe about, I think we say it's about 315 million people. And that is a case rate per 100,000 persons of 9,616 persons per 100,000 population. So I give you that rate because we're going to talk a little bit about the rate in our state and kind of where we, this is where we've been, where the average is, and we're going to talk about where we are kind of right now. Stephanie has been on the decrease, but we'll see a little bit more. The COVID deaths, so you see this number reported. Ooh, is that me right in there? Sorry about that. I don't want to do that. I don't know if that's me doing that. Anyway, so you see that the total COVID cases in the United States, or deaths, excuse me, 569,000, almost 570,000 deaths. That's a rate of about 171 persons per 100,000 persons. And then in the last 7 days, we've seen a COVID case rate of 4,681 persons. Out of what we used to have, I mean, that rate has come way, way, way down, way down. So at the bottom here, what I've put in is a graph from the CDC that what you see is that way back in January here, we go from a rate where we rise, we rise, we rise, we rise, and then somewhere around late October, early November, you see that that red line is that's the 7-day COVID case rate. And you'll see that it kind of goes up and down, but the general trend is very high to where we're at a high of, we're at a high of 250,000 cases here, according to the graph here. And then it does decline significantly and steeply. And you'll see we're kind of got little bumps here, but it's on the downward trend. These blue lines here indicate individual days.
Mr. Calloway, we couldn't hear you.
I'm sorry?
We couldn't hear you, kind of faded out on us.
Oh, I'm sorry. So what I'm saying is that this particular case rate here that you see, daily rate is the blue lines here. And so you'll see that we have days where the number of cases peaks and shoots way up. But what is more important is the 7-day trend. So in general, we're seeing spikes and peaks, but in general, it is headed downward, which is good news in terms of the United States and the overall trend. We're not going to get into the states other than talking about Missouri, but this just gives you an overall picture of where we've been with COVID and where it looks like we're going. This next slide is talking about Missouri in particular. And what you see here is that the COVID cases, this was reported April the 23rd. So the data lags a little bit behind, but it's still pretty current. And so the current number of COVID-19 cases for Missouri is 3,969, almost 4,000 cases. And that's a rate of 65 cases per 100,000 population. Now, I'll remind you that Missouri's population is about 6.17 million, something like that. So, that's, if you think about 100,000 persons, it's a relatively small number per 100,000. The actual change from the previous week is we're down 1%. In terms of COVID deaths, we're at 58 that were reported in this particular date, and the rate is per 100,000 persons, and that's a rate of less than 1% per 100,000. That's a bigger change from the previous week of 53%. However, I hope to show you in just a minute that while that's good news compared to the previous week, overall, we still have a ways to go, even though we are doing well. Number of cases confirmed and suspected. So confirmed and suspected includes confirmed cases. So 1,600 roughly confirmed and suspected cases in hospitals. This report in hospital admissions, and that's a rate of 11 per 100 beds. That's down 1% from previous week. And then confirmed cases, again, a percentage of that or a portion of that, 411 cases of that, and that's only a rate of 3%. That also is a decrease from the previous week. So why is that important? Why do we care about that? The reason we care about that is because the problem that we had with COVID cases was that our hospitals were not able to handle all the COVID patients who were coming in, either with suspected COVID or with actual COVID-19. And so we're at a great place now where all of our hospitals pretty much are doing well in terms of being able to handle the patients that are coming to their doors, if you will. That said, the next piece of this that we have is that the number of hospitals that have supply shortages, so whether that's PPE, personal protective equipment, that's 6% of the hospitals in Missouri that are reporting supply shortages. That's up from 17% from the previous week. So, we kind of go back and forth in terms of being able to have enough equipment to operate with. And that 17% still is better than we were at other times during the past year. And then hospitals that are reporting staff shortages. So this is a big deal because you can have hospital beds, but the problem is our healthcare workers have been working so hard for this last year that hospitals are reporting staff that are burnt out, staff that aren't able to work. They're losing people that have to take time off because they work so hard. And so a good number of hospitals, 22 hospitals, or again, that's not a large number compared to Missouri, but 22 hospitals are reporting shortages of staff. And that's 18% of the state total. And that is, although that's reported, it's down just a little bit from a previous week. So you have to kind of think about where maybe it's been previously.
We're all seeing it, and it's really very tragic.
I'm sorry, what was that? Someone's mentioning about an area where you are. Would you repeat that? I'm sorry, I missed that. Okay, I'll move on. Overall cases have gone down, but there has been an increase, similar to what you saw with the United States information, that there has been a slight bump and some recent spikes in the 7-day average of daily COVID cases. And that some of that's been like a day spike and some of it has been a 7-day spike. I would suggest to you that over the last 3 weeks, some of the larger counties in Missouri, like Greene County, down the Springfield area, Jefferson County, Cass County, Clay County, Boone County, Camden County, Lincoln County, St. Louis County, Jackson County, and McDonough counties have all reported either a single day uptick significantly above other days or a 7-day bump in their 7-day case total. So again, this is something that the state and local public health agencies are watching because we ain't kicked this thing just yet. So hang on. Okay, so let's talk about vaccinations. So vaccinations. So this is for the entire United States. And you'll see that, so I started this presentation. I started doing the research on this to look up information back last week on the 21st of April. So this data is as of the 21st of April. You'll see that, the total doses of vaccine that have been administered in the United States from all the different sources is about 278 million. Again, remember, we've got about 315 million people in the US. Remember that we've got vaccines that have to be given twice. And so this is not enough vaccines to vaccinate everybody, but given the percentages that we have vaccinated, it's a pretty good supply. So the amount administered is about 216 million. That breaks down to people that have been vaccinated and gotten at least one dose, people that are fully vaccinated. As a percent of the population, people that have gotten one dose is sitting at about 41%, and people who are fully vaccinated is only about a quarter of our total population. Okay, these are the numbers for folks that are over 18 years of age and older, because except for the one vaccine, it's not approved for persons under 18. You can see the numbers there and you can kind of do your own math, but this is the number that I want you to note here, and that is the percentage of the population 65 years and older. This again was a week ago, and the number that gotten at least one dose was 80.6%, and folks that have gotten and are fully vaccinated is about almost 66%. That's a great number. That's a fantastic number, fantastic number. And the other thing I would point out is that while we had restrictions on who was eligible to receive the vaccine, on April 19th, all US residents 18 or older became eligible to receive the vaccine, according to the executive order from President Biden. That date was originally supposed to have been May the 1st, and he moved up the vaccination, that restriction removal, and that was based on him hitting a rate of like 2 million vaccines a day that they were trying to hit. So they've done a fantastic job of getting vaccines out. The challenge still remains in individual states that all have different ways that they handle the vaccines to be able to get it in folks' arms. So to that information, here is the vaccination in the states 1 week later. And what I did is I tried to compare the change in the numbers in just a week's time to what happened before that. So you remember I mentioned 2 million doses a day, 2 million vaccines a day. Well, in a 7-day period, the increase was about 20 million vaccinations. So that's a rate greater than 2 million a day, or that's a rate greater than 1 million a day. It's between 1 million and 2 million a day in a 7-day period. And then the number administered, 16.5 million. So we're hitting pretty good in terms of the desired rate of immunization. You see here people that have been vaccinated. Again, all of these numbers show slight increases, ranging from 1.2% to 2.2%. These numbers down here for folks that are 65 and older are going up slowly, but they're already pretty high. So, that incremental increase in the number of folks in that age group vaccinated, it's going to be incrementally slow. Excuse me, as a percent of the population, again, that's going up slowly as well. It's almost 43% for the total population and about 21% for folks who are fully vaccinated. Again, this is data from April 27. And what I have here, and I'm happy to share this PowerPoint with Ms. Matthews and Ms. Meacham-Kane and Ms. Jenkins. I'll share the PowerPoint because there is a link here that takes you to the CDC's website where you actually can see the actual numbers for yourself as they increase from day to day. The numbers actually change from day to day. Okay, so let's talk about Missouri. So Missouri has a website. This is their website here. It's actually a very good website. And I encourage you to visit it because there's some interesting data there. So Missouri is sitting at about 3.5 million doses administered. And the way they indicate that is they say that's the total doses that have been administered. And it includes persons that have gotten the first and second doses. If we talk about the number of people that have started vaccinations, a week ago, we were sitting at about 2.2 million people. And again, that's out of 6.2 million people in Missouri. So, but that roughly was about 35.2% that have initiated vaccinations. So that's about a third of our 6.2 population, right? What I tried to do also from their website is break down what does that look like for white persons and Black persons, because we talk disparity in vaccinations. And so if you pay attention to the percentages here show that 28.6% of white persons have initiated vaccination versus 18.7, almost 19% of Black folks have initiated vaccine. When we talk about folks who have been completely vaccinated, again, we're only at roughly 25% of our population in Missouri. And the numbers there are 20.1% for whites and 11.7% of Black. Now, this is not percentages of the population. These are percentages that those people represent out of the population. So it's basically taking the number of Black folks. How many of those Black folks have been vaccinated? Only 11.7%. White folks, however many white folks we have in Missouri, how many of those have been vaccinated? Well, only 20.1%, and that's more than Black folks. So there is a disparity there. Now, let me clarify that for you a little bit, because these numbers are actually very misleading. So I'm gonna go to the Missouri's website here. And let me just show you something real quick, because I don't have an explanation for this, but I will show you this, that when we talk about here who has been vaccinated, and I hope you can see this, they let you see it by race. Missouri has an unusual number here in that here's Black, and if you mouse over it, it shows the numbers for you. And then here are white. Again, it references the same numbers Black, but talks about percentage white. Here's a field they call multiracial, and it's a very large number. And it shows that 71.3% of folks that call themselves multiracial have initiated vaccination, and of completed, it's 59.7%. I'm not sure how meaningful that is. It definitely kind of messes up the data when you're trying to figure out disparity and figure out, what's happening with folks. And I've not seen where what they say here is that due to a known technical issue, vaccinations of multi-race residents are being overcounted. We're working to correct this. Well, okay, that's great. I want to see the numbers when you get done with that, because this is not helpful in terms of figuring out who all's been vaccinated. But what I'm pretty sure that we can talk about is that there is some disparity in the vaccination of people of color in the state of Missouri. So again, it is what it is, but I don't think it's a good number to talk about. All right, let me see if I can get back to my PowerPoint here. Let's see. Okay, let me get out of that here. No. Pause share, Zoom share. All right, let's see if I got to get where I can find this. Okay, let's get this here. Let's see. Okay. Is this it? Sorry about that. Okay, there we go. I think that's it. Can you see that? Can you see my PowerPoint there?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and the last thing I want you to see on here is, and so here's the Missouri population, 6.137. It's down a little bit, as reported in 2019. The number of vaccines that have been delivered to Missouri already are about 4.9 million, almost 5 million. But the other piece of it is that compared to the federal, is that on April 9th, all Missouri residents 18 or older became eligible to receive the COVID-19 vaccination. So that's good news. Good news. Okay, so I did a quick pop in to look at the data 1 week later, not quite a week later, because that was the April 21st for Missouri. And so here's some information that compares what we're doing on vaccinations. So we're up basically as of the 26th of April, we're up 214,000 doses administered. We're up 101,000 doses administered, or people starting their vaccinations. Sometime during that time, the Jnj vaccine became available as well, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So that was an increase of about 1.7% in the percentage of Missourians that had initiated vaccination. If we look at that based on white and Black, again, according to the state's designation, the percentages of persons up in each group were about 1.4%. Oh, I'm missing a number here. I'm sorry about that. I'll have to fix that. I don't have that number here. Anyway, but it was up 1.4%. If we look at those that are completely vaccinated, up 114,000 completely vaccinated persons. And then that represents almost a 2% increase in persons totally, completely vaccinated, or we'll use the term fully vaccinated, because that's what I'll talk about in just a minute also. That's an increase of 1.5% persons who are white persons, and it's 1% increase persons who are Black. So we still have a disparity. The other thing I want you to see.
Call me?
I'm sorry. The other thing I want you to see is that the number of doses that have been administered in the last 7 days, that's the period of April 13th through 19th, is down 64,000. So not sure if I suspect that may be because the J&J vaccine, some of the things that were scheduled for that maybe didn't happen. The number of doses that have been delivered is up, but the number of folks who are actually had a dose administered, I think, is probably down a little bit because there was a pause in the J&J vaccine, which we'll talk about in a second. And the other thing with the J&J vaccine is that we'll talk about the pause, but while the pause didn't mean that folks couldn't administer the vaccine, in Missouri, the state allowance or the state order to administer the J&J vaccine was rescinded for a short period of time. So people in Missouri who were giving it based on the Director of Health and Senior Services, the medical director's order, they couldn't give those doses. So let's talk about the J&J vaccine. So first of all, 6.8 million doses of the vaccine had been administered as of April 13th, okay? On April 13th, the CDC recommended a pause due to 6 reported cases of a rare and severe blood clot event called thrombosis, thrombocytopenia syndrome. So the technical piece of that is that you get blood clots, but instead of the platelets that normally stop you from bleeding, platelets are also low. So that's kind of a double whammy, if you will, because the things you need in your body to stop you from having a blood clot, you're low on those kinds of things. So this was pretty serious, but it's also very rare. It was observed that women ages 18 to 48, it occurred in women that were aged 18 to 48, and it happened about 6 to 13 days after receiving the J&J vaccine. Again, they couldn't prove that it was due to that, but it was the occurrence that followed. In other words, the proximate, there was proximity to the vaccination and to this event. Then as of April 23rd, it was confirmed there were 15 total cases. It occurred in women aged 18 to 59 with a median age of 37 years, and it occurred 6 to 15 days after receiving the vaccination. And I think it said that there were 2 women that actually died, and that most of the women in the category did have to be hospitalized and had to be treated. Now, the total number of doses administered by this time was up to 8 million doses that was administered through that time in April. So we're talking about 15 cases out of 8 million cases. Now, that's a very, very small percentage. Now, I don't want to minimize the importance of that, because here's the deal. For any side effect or anything that might be due to a drug or whatever, you might be very small, but if you're the one person or the person who actually gets it, it's 100% for you. So you have to make sure, and you had to make some decisions, which is what the CDC and the FDA had to do. They paused it to be able to further investigate what might be going on. And when they did that, after 2 meetings and after discussing it and looking at all the information and the data, on the 23rd of April, they decided that they would recommend lifting the pause based on their assessment that the benefits outweigh the risks. And that's really the case with any drug that we take or that we put on the market to administer or take, is that the benefits have to outweigh the risks. Talk about the benefits in a minute. So what's happened now is that vaccinations have resumed with additional information for patients, particularly women under 50 years old, and information for providers to make them aware of the risks associated with this. Part of what happened with this was to make clinicians who might treat this particular rare side effect, this rare event, is to make sure they know how to properly treat it. Because the problem is, if they use the regular medication that they normally use for blood clots, it could create a more hazardous situation for persons affected by this. So what else can we say about this? Well, here are the benefits of the pause and the benefits of the J&J vaccine. So the J&J vaccine can be stored at normal refrigerator temperature compared to the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. So this is going to increase access for persons, including if you think about homeless persons, right? Homeless persons who, you have to go get them where they are. And also the likelihood that you're going to be able to give them 2 doses of one of the other vaccines, probably not so much. So the second bullet point I have is that you only need to give 1 dose of it. People who don't like shots, people who are not likely to return for a second dose, you have a chance to get them and give them very effective vaccination coverage. It's also in the studies with it, allowing the emergency use authorization, the vaccine was 100% effective at preventing severe disease, particularly deaths and hospitalizations, okay? So, it doesn't mean, there's maybe a small percentage of people who might still get COVID, but the point is they're not going to die, and they're not going to have to be hospitalized because of that. Again, that's not everybody. That's not every situation 100%, but to a large extent, this was the endpoint compared to the other vaccines, in that this is proven to prevent deaths. That's my take home there. And then the other good thing about the pause is that it showed that the system for monitoring and ensuring safety with the FDA and the CDC, that it actually works. And going back to the trials, we see similar to the other vaccines, they had more than 40,000 patients involved. This particular technology that was used, which was an adenovirus compared to the mRNA process for the 2 Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, is actually not a new technique. It was used when they were trying to find a vaccine for the Ebola virus, and it uses the same adenovector technique. And then the side effect profile is still the same as other vaccines, with the exception of the unusual side effect, which we may still find some unusual and rare things with the other vaccines. And then finally, the recommendation is that you should take whatever vaccine you are offered. Really, really important.
Mr. Calloway,
So,
you have a question
yes.
from St. Louis, Ms.
Yes,
Marla.
please. Come
Yes.
on.
My question is, we know that there has been 2 deaths and some people hospitalized from taking or receiving the Johnson & Johnson. However, I wanted to find out or clarify, has there been any deaths from people that have taken the other vaccines?
That's a great question. Thank you for that. I do not know if there have been. That I don't know. I can find out from that, and I'm happy to report back to you on that. That's whether or not there are deaths. Yes, I'm happy to report back, but that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that.
All right.
I don't know.
Thank you.
And to your point, that's an excellent point. To your point, one of the things about vaccines and the FDA's process is that there's supposed to be a post-marketing, and even though these aren't marketed, but there's a part of the process of drug approval is that there is this post-surveillance type of process that's set up that requires the manufacturers to collect data on any medicine that they have. And this is not new. This applies to any medicine that is put on the market. So yes, that's an excellent question. I'm suspecting that we would have possibly heard more about that, but again, sometimes information is selective
Yes.
You know what I'm
and
saying?
That's my point.
Sometimes it's selective.
That is
And
my
I
point,
understand
because-
exactly your point.
because I've heard other people saying it's a hidden, there are hidden stories about the other vaccines that are not being shared. And the other thing is there's a lot of conversation about the previous situation with the Johnson & Johnson case with the baby powder or the talcum powder. I mean, and I just think that it's again, it could potentially be some type of hidden discrimination. And it's also affecting the productivity in terms of people making their decision to get the shot. So there are countless things that can affect, people being vaccinated, and this is one of them. Because there's like favoritism or more marketing that's being provided for the other companies, of which one of the companies are in the state of Missouri. So those are just some things to consider.
Certainly. And let me just put a point on that. That's a great point, Ms. Moore Collins. That's a great point. The skeptic in me says that the whole pharmaceutical industry, let's just put it like this. The pharmaceutical industry likes to sell drugs, okay? I mean, that's how they survive. That's how they do. And the extent to which our systems work to try to keep them in check, to try and have them be transparent, and to report that, I believe that those systems are in place. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that we fully, so the CDC, there's a side effect reporting thing out there where people can actually go and see what the side effects are that have been reported. And I can point you to that website. So you can go out and look up any particular side effect that might be out there. That doesn't mean that they make it easy to use that, or that they make it easy for the lay person to access that information, okay? So what I'll say is that I do think there are some influences from the pharmaceutical manufacturers. I've mentioned in different talks that I've given that the pharmaceutical industry is probably the largest lobbying agency in terms of money that they put out there when they're in the halls of Congress. They lobby our legislators big time, okay? But the kind of nice thing about this right now is that even though the legislators ultimately make the laws that regulate all these kinds of things, the agencies underneath them that are the ones that do the work and actually create the regulations and things that monitor all these sort of things. So I feel pretty good about the United States and our process for it. Could it be better? I would say it could be more transparent. I think it really could. And my strong recommendation is that there is just as much, I don't want to say just as much, there's a lot of hype out there that you're going to hear about, that the vaccines are, it's a plot to get rid of Black people and that sort of stuff. And my thing is, where's that coming from? In general, there are anti-vaxxers out there who ignore the evidence that vaccinations, we've gotten rid of smallpox. We've pretty much gotten rid of measles and these diseases that have took people out in earlier times. And so why we would not believe that vaccines actually work, why we would not believe that, I think that's the plot to get Black folks to not participate.
And I agree with you.
That's my opinion.
Thank you. Thank you so much. But I also wanted to add this note. I think it's so important that you were able to explain it the way that you did in terms of answering my question. And again, thank you. But the other thing I think that's important for people to realize is whether it's a vaccine because of the pandemic or whether it's your daily medication, all medications have a possible side effect. That's
Yes.
the bottom line.
Absolutely. 200%. You are spot on. I don't ever, when someone tells me they think they might have had a side effect, I don't ever say, oh, it can't be. Because It can't be. We don't know all the effects of medications, and every medication you take is a balance between the beneficial effects and the adverse effects. Everything you take, there's no such thing as a drug that has no side effects. It just isn't.
All right, thank you, Mr. Calloway, for helping us.
Thank you. Thank you. That's an excellent, outstanding question. Outstanding question, outstanding point. So I'm going to finish up here. Here are the reasons to take the vaccine according to the CDC. And it's to decrease death and serious disease. All the vaccines are effective. It's to preserve the functioning of our society. We want to help stop community spread of this disease. The idea of herd immunity just means that the virus has no place to go. So if more people are vaccinated and can't get the virus, then the virus is going, that's what causes the virus to not continue to replicate. If we reduce the extra burden of COVID-19 on folks who are already facing disparities, like our persons that are 65 and older, Black and Indigenous people of color, and persons with chronic diseases, that's what we want to do. And then increase our chances that everyone can enjoy health and well-being. I like to think that it's not about you, it's really about us. And so my reasons that I've given before is that and again, Ms. Moore Collins makes an excellent point. I believe that Black folks are intelligent enough to make their own decisions. And even though we can put out information out there and give all the different reasons and, you know, what seems like hype to get people to take it, give people the facts and let people make their own decisions. Black folks are smart enough to get this figured out, okay? You know, it's a matter of weighing your risk and doing your own budget for what kinds of things you're willing to do, which you'll see in a second. So these were my reasons for taking the vaccine. You know, I want us to get to normal as much as normal, or whatever normal, new normal is going to be. The disparities issue is a big deal. And I want to set an example for others who might be hesitant to get the vaccine. And I'm excited at the fact that I was able to visit my son and his family in Urbana, Illinois this weekend, because I've been vaccinated, they've all been vaccinated, and we've been missing each other for some time. So there's breaking news about what people can do who are fully vaccinated. So some of this just came out from the CDC, and President Biden announced this. So the first point is fully vaccinated people do not need to continue to wear a mask outdoors, except in certain crowded settings and venues. That's great news, great news. Also, fully vaccinated people don't have to, you know, if they're indoors, they can be indoors without wearing a mask or physically distancing in terms of being with others who are fully vaccinated. And again, fully vaccinated here, this is the definition of fully vaccinated here, is if it's been 2 weeks since you received the second dose in a 2-dose series, or 2 weeks after you've gotten a single dose vaccine, you are considered fully vaccinated. And while we don't know specifically how long the vaccine is good for, the earliest folks who've been vaccinated was back in November when the Pfizer vaccine first became available. And the company continues to test whether those folks have immunity from the vaccine. And you'll hear them say, well, 6 months in, those folks are still immune, you know, still have protection. We don't know how long it's going to be, but we think it's for a good bit of time longer than 6 months for sure. So stay tuned on that. And then the issues about traveling and don't have to test and all those kinds of things, those are all good news as well. And there's a source here that links to the CDC's guidance. And then other questions people ask about, what do you do? What do you still need to do even if you're fully vaccinated? So these again are from the CDC. And the key is indoor settings, you need to wear a mask. Indoor settings, because part of the problem is you don't know what other people's status is. You don't know if they've been fully vaccinated or partially vaccinated. And you're gonna go around and ask them, right? You're not gonna say, have you been vaccinated, right? So people you don't know, that's their business. And you ain't gonna tell anybody your business either. You need to wear a well-fitted mask visiting indoors with unvaccinated people or people you don't know their status, who are at increased risk for disease from COVID, because you don't want to give it to them at all. You don't want them to be exposed. There's a risk there that you don't know what that risk is. Multiple households. Again, the point is you don't know. Indoor, large size gatherings, still avoid them. The question becomes about restaurants and things like that. That's an indoor setting, and some facilities, some businesses haven't, like I still get, make sure I always wear my mask. Like if I go up to a store, like a gas station or something where I'm traveling, and there's nothing on there about masks required or something like that, and even if it is, I'm still gonna wear my mask when I go in, right? Because I'm budgeting my risk. This is something, again, from the CDC website that tries to give you in a graphic form the same information that I've kind of shared with you in more particular form. On this side, you have unvaccinated people, and you'll see that there's a progression of people with no mask. This is a mask, wear a mask, and that's even for vaccinated people, different situations that you may find that here's what you should do. And that's really all that I have for you. Questions. I think we're a little bit over, but questions that you might have.
Let's go with the other side of the state, starting in reverse order. Kansas City. Do you have any questions for Mr. Calloway? Kansas City, going once. Twice. Let's move to Central, where we are. Any questions from Central Missouri?
I have two questions for you, Mr. Calloway.
Yes.
For those that
Okay.
For those that took the 2-dose vaccine, do they need to get the exact same booster, or can they get a different booster, or what kind of booster do they need to get if, depending on what kind of vaccine they've already had?
Are you referring to the normal 2-dose cycle, or are you thinking to a time when we might need to get a booster?
Yes, so I've heard that there eventually will be a booster so many months down the road, but I know that they say, like, if you got the Moderna for your first injection, you need that for your second injection, that you can't mix the two-dose vaccine. So is that true for the booster? Like if you got the Moderna, do you need to get a Moderna booster, or can you get a Pfizer booster or a J&J booster? Does that actually matter?
That's a really, really great question that we don't have an answer to. Let me offer completely a personal opinion, complete personal opinion. And this is that there is some thought that particularly if you have the Pfizer vaccines and the Moderna vaccine, both of those use the same technology in development of the vaccines, and except possibly for the diluent or something that is put in it, it might seem reasonable that you could get a booster of a different vaccine that is made in the same way. Again, this is not anything that I have seen from manufacturers' literature, FDA, CDC, or anything like that. But it seems reasonable that a booster, if it's determined that the amount of protection wanes over some time and we need to get a booster, or if there's a variant that comes out there. There's still a lot of variables in that. So the question becomes, how will they create the booster to cover the variants, right? Are they going to actually target the particular vaccine, the particular variant, a particular like piece of the spike or something like that, which is how those vaccines work, or are they going to do it some other way? So again, total speculation on what that looks like. If I were to think about it, it would be you probably shouldn't. So the J&J is the adenovirus vector. You shouldn't mix that particular vaccine with the Moderna and the Pfizer. We may find that you can switch the Moderna and the Pfizer, but part of, again, so to Ms. Collins' comment about the pharmaceutical manufacturers, you're not going to get that from the pharmaceutical manufacturers. They're not going to be interested in telling you that you could use a different vaccine, different manufacturer's vaccine for a booster. They're not going to be interested in telling you that, okay? So the answer, bottom line is, we'll have to see. We don't know.
And my second question is, it's a more personal question. So I have issues with blood clots, and I have to take 2 blood thinners every day, basically for the rest of my life. I have been really hesitant about getting the vaccine just because of the blood clot issues that I already have. What
Oh,
lady came yesterday. I mean, she's on that. Like, what would be your professional opinion on someone who has issues with blood clots? And like, I've had blood clots in my neck and in my arm, and we've had to do, different methods to break those blood clots up and things like that. So what would you, give advice on that?
Sure. So 2 questions come up with that, and one, comment. One is, have you received other vaccinations at all?
No. They have basically been really hesitant on even proceeding with the surgery that I actually need, just because of my issue with blood clots.
Sure. Okay. So my recommendation, that's something you'll have to work out with your doctor. Your doctor is going to have to be the best source of information on that. And I understand that that's kind of a circular argument, because part of what happens is one of your doctors may tell you to go talk to another doctor, right?
Yeah.
And so they tend to like pass the buck because they don't want to make a recommendation, and they don't want to be, it's kind of a hands-off kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that, I'm going to kind of pass the buck also, but what I would definitively say is, do not go near the J&J vaccine, absolutely, for sure, just because we absolutely don't know. Theoretically, there's nothing in the mRNA vaccines that should be a problem, but we just really don't know. That's going to take more research, and I think ultimately, here's what I would recommend you to do, is that the doctors who think that whoever doctor has the most interest in your issue, that doctor can call. I recommend they call the NIH and pose that as a research question and ask them for help in figuring that out. The National Institutes of Health and also the CDC, to try to call them and see if they have any reports specifically about any adverse things that may have happened, and figure out how to get forward and thinking about whether what should the guidance and advice should be, for sure. Again, that's a benefit versus a risk kind of thing. And, it may just very well be that the risks outweigh the benefits for you. And if other folks in your network are able to get vaccinated, man, if they care about you, that's the best thing that they can do for you. All other things considered being equal. So, great question.
Thank you.
Let's take another question from Central Missouri. Going once. Going twice. All righty, let's keep it moving. St. Louis. Are there any more questions from St. Louis? Let's move down the virtual highway to Mississippi County. Charleston, any questions for Mr. Calloway?
Not muted now.
Yeah, there's been some talk about doing the first dose and not taking the second dose. What are the advantages or disadvantages for people who think they don't need to take the second dose of the vaccine?
Great question. Great question. You guys are so smart. That's why I love you. Okay. So you may have heard in some other countries, in England in particular, their strategy that they thought that they were going to pursue against the manufacturer's recommendations were that they were going to give as many people as possible that first dose and not reserve doses, that second dose for them. And really, it really does make sense, because here's the deal. If you actually get so we think that with the first dose of those vaccines that require 2 doses, we think that immunity to the vaccination gets you up to maybe 60–70%, something like that. Well, you might remember that we've talked maybe about the flu vaccine. So in any given year, the flu vaccine has been as little as about 35% effective and as much as about 65% effective. So if you take that idea, and the thing that doesn't get talked about is that people die from the flu every year, right? Every year people die from the flu. Now, most of us aren't afraid of getting the flu, most of us. And the folks who die generally are older persons, which is the same case with COVID. They're more at risk of death and hospitalization from it. But when I worked at the hospital, we always had people hospitalized for the flu through flu season. Now, we didn't have them generally die, but they did. So the short story is, it seems reasonable that people only get 1 dose will have some protection for sure. I do not recommend that they not get the second dose. 1, because that's against the manufacturer's recommendation. But if I get somebody and they come for a flu shot and they're not 100% sure if they're gonna make it back for their second one, I'm gonna not give them the vaccination. You know what I'm saying? In other words, I'm gonna say, hey, you're here. I'm gonna give you this one. I really, really want you to come back. Okay? I really want you to come back, because you're gonna get the best protection that you can possibly get. I don't want you to fall through the cracks and that. But the reality is, they recommend 2 doses because that's the way the manufacturers studied it and developed it. Okay? And there's a thought that, is 70% okay? Well, you got some protection. That's better than nothing. But again, I would not recommend that people, I would never tell someone, don't worry about coming back. You're good to go. You're good enough, right? That's like people going to high school and going to college, right? Getting a GED, a good enough degree, right? Like, don't get the good enough degree. Get the real one, right? And then go on from there, right? GED will get you by. But okay, that's my best analogy.
Thank you for the analogy. Let's see. We're still down in Southeast Missouri. Any other questions for Mississippi County? Let's move over to Sikeston. Any questions from Sikeston? Going once?
This is Yvonne.
Going twice?
No, I didn't.
We have one more satellite location,
did.
Carruthersville. Any questions from the Carruthersville office?
No, I don't. I'm in total agreement with Mr. Calloway. I've had both of mine and they're just fine. I'm in agreement with you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any other comments, suggestions, questions? Going once, twice?
You know, the only other thing that I would like to mention, Ms. Jenkins, is that, you know, I do worry a little bit about vaccine slowdown.
Yes.
Because there are people, not necessarily on this talk today, but there are people around us. Again, this is a reason for us to watch out for ourselves. I think we're now running into people who say, I ain't getting that vaccine, right? I'm not going to get it. And I'm not going to get into reasons why. There's a lot of information about the who it is that's unwilling to be vaccinated. Okay, I got that. And so, but the good news is the vaccine is widely available pretty much anywhere you go. There was a time when some of the rural areas were getting more vaccine than the urban areas. And I think that's pretty much been taken care of. And so in general, you know, because you don't necessarily need appointments and all that kind of stuff, that was a barrier, I think, too. People should be able to have access to the vaccine, which is why I didn't provide information about where you can get the vaccine today. And I would refer to the previous, you know, report from the young lady from DHSS that helped with that. But man, don't let people talk you into not getting it, you know, as we slow down, because I think this is the path for us to be able to resume a more normal existence in our society.
Mr. Calloway, if possible, I have one more question, and I did have to step away for a moment, so I hope I'm not repeating myself. But my question is, by any chance, can you offer any information in terms of historically about the Tuskegee Airmen, the Tuskegee project that happened that people of color often associate the vaccine process with? Because I think that has a lot to do with people questioning if they should get it or not. And if you could offer an explanation about that, I would really appreciate it.
Yeah, so what I know about the Tuskegee Airman experiment, I can only describe that as, for lack of a better word, devious. I mean, devilish. And why the investigators thought they needed information about what would happen if Black men were not treated for syphilis, I do not for the life of me know why they thought that or who authorized that experiment, if you will. You know, the only thing that I can offer, I guess, from a standpoint of, you know, how do we make sure that that doesn't happen again is that, you know, I think we've learned a lot from the experiments and different things that happened with Jewish people during the Nazi situation, and that we've learned some things from that. And so some of the rules around international research have now come into play. And I think those are helpful for making sure that we don't ever allow something like that to happen again, because that wasn't about drug research. That was about human experimentation. Not that drug research isn't, you know, doesn't involve human experimentation, but that was about, I don't even know how to describe the atrocity that really was. The only other thing I think about with that too is that, you know, the federal government and really the military, for lack of a better term, because these were Tuskegee Airmen. They were part of the military and essentially was a armed forces kind of demonstration. You know, the thing about the armed forces is that while there are some good things about the armed forces and opportunities that they provide, think what you'll find is that the government kind of, like, think about the VA hospital these days. So the VA hospital, anywhere you are in federal service, if you will, whether it's public health service or Indian reservations even, which is part of public health services, those are islands in and of themselves. The example I give is that as a registered pharmacist, I have to be licensed to practice in the state of Missouri. If I have a license anywhere in the United States, I can practice at the VA hospital anywhere in the United States. So the rules kind of for the VA and the government like that are really, they're their own island. And so, for lack of a better term to talk about that, I am comfortable that we will never see that happen again. We just, it's not ever going to happen again.
But Mr. Calloway, for one moment, the one thing that you said, I think that is key that people need to be able to understand and capture. The first couple of words that you said when soon after I asked you the question, and you said that it was an experiment, but there was a treatment. And what everybody is forgetting is the reason why those gentlemen were so ill is because they didn't receive the treatment.
Correct.
And we are here
Correct.
now are able to receive a treatment. And that's what people are missing with that story.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah. Well, and we, so that's the other thing that is unethical is that when there's a treatment for something, withholding the treatment as part of the experimentation is a it's a stop, for lack of a better word. That's how we tell when things are unethical, because if the trial is give these people a treatment, don't give these people a treatment, that's kind of a problem. And even studies where you're trying to determine if something works, what typically happens is that once you determine that something works, then usually the study ends and you give the people who didn't have the treatment, you give them that treatment. That's usually what happens. And the trial ends prematurely, and you don't let people continue to the end of a trial without receiving a treatment that helps them. So your point is perfect and exactly correct. Very much so.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Calloway. This has really been a very informative and insightful and just very interesting presentation. And as one of my mentors would say, you always, Mr. Calloway, rise to the occasion. Even if we contact you within a week or so, you're able to pull together and present a very informative presentation and how you convey it to our seniors. It's understandable. And I have to give you kudos for when you use stats. Not very many people can do that because you can lose your audience when it comes to stats, but stats are very important when you are trying to, especially dealing with this pandemic. So thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. I love this group. So y'all rock.
All right.
Paula J. Carter Center rocks.
Thank you.